What happened from the moment that vote took place? Oil prices went up to $90 a barrel. Who benefits from that? All this talk of war, all this talk of declaring people to be terrorists drove up the price of oil. Secondly, we have emboldened Bush at a minimum. His talk of World War III, totally irresponsible talk. We've emboldened him, Tim, to be able to move if he chooses to move. They're terrorists. The fact that they're terrorists on one side of the border or the other, we've just declared them terrorists. That gives him the color of right to move against them. Thirdly, this has incredible consequences for Afghanistan and Pakistan. Nobody talks about this. The 75 of our colleagues don't understand. We have now driven underground every moderate in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. This literally puts Karzai as well as Musharraf in jeopardy. The notion here is it plays into this whole urban legend that America's on a crusade against Islam. This was bad if nothing else happens, not another single thing. This was bad policy. The president had the ability to do everything that amendment, that resolution called for without us talking to it, and all it has done is hurt us. Even if not another single action is taken, actions have consequences. Big nations can't bluff.
Senator Obama, let's get at this another way. Red line is the current expression of the moment where Iran is concerned in Washington. What would your red line be concerning when to, if to, attack Iran? What would make it crystal clear in your mind that the United States should attack Iran?
I don't think we should be talking about attacking Iran at this point for some of the reasons that Chris and Joe just talked about. Look, we have been seeing during the Republican debates the drumbeat of war. The president has been talking about World War III. That is a continuation of the kinds of foreign policy that rejects diplomacy and sees military action as the only tool available to us to influence the region. And what we should be doing is reaching out aggressively to our allies, but also talking to our enemies and focusing on those areas where we do not accept their actions, whether it be terrorism or developing nuclear weapons, but also talking to Iran directly about the potential carrots that we can provide in terms of them being involved in the World Trade Organization or beginning to look at the possibilities of diplomatic relations being normalized. We have not made those serious attempts. This kind of resolution does not send the right signal to the region. It doesn't send the right signal to our allies or our enemies. And as a consequence, I think over the long term, it weakens our capacity to influence Iran. Now, there may come a point where those measures have been exhausted and Iran is on the verge of obtaining a nuclear weapon, where we have to consider other options, but we shouldn't talk about those options now when we haven't even tried what would be a much more effective approach.
Same question to Senator Clinton. What would be your red line?
Well, first of all, we have to try diplomacy, and I see economic sanctions as part of diplomacy. We've used it with other very difficult situations like Libya, like North Korea, and I think that what we're trying to do here is put pressure on the Bush administration. Joe's absolutely right. George Bush can do all of this without anybody. You know, that's the great tragedy, and that's why we've got to rein him in, and that's why we need Republican support in the Congress to help us do so. And I invite all of our colleagues to pass something immediately that makes it very clear he has no authority, and we will not permit him to go take offensive action against Iran. But what we're trying to do is push forward on vigorous diplomacy. That has been lacking. I believe we should be engaged in diplomacy right now with the Iranians. Everything should be on the table, not just their nuclear program. I've been advocating this for several years. I believe it strongly. But I also think when you go to the table to negotiate with an adversarial regime, you need both carrots and sticks. The Revolutionary Guard is deeply involved in the commercial activities of Iran. Having those economic sanctions hanging over their heads gives our negotiators one of the set of sticks that we need to try to make progress in dealing with a very complicated situation. Everybody agrees up here that President Bush has made a total mess out of the situation with Iran. What we're trying to do is to sort our way through to try to put diplomacy with some carrots and some sticks into the mix and get the president to begin to do that.
Respectfully, Senator, same question, though. Do you have a threshold, a red line beyond which?
I want to start diplomacy. I am not going to speculate about when or if they get nuclear weapons. We're trying to prevent them from getting so. We're not, in my view, rushing to war. We should not be doing that, but we shouldn't be doing nothing, and that means we should not let them acquire nuclear weapons, and the best way to prevent that is a full court press on the diplomatic front.
I've noted all of our candidates want in on this. Senator Edwards, you next.
Thank you very much. Well, I just listened to what Senator Clinton said, and she said she wanted to maximize pressure on the Bush administration. So the way to do that is to vote yes on a resolution that looks like it was written literally by the neocons. I mean, has anyone read this thing? I mean, it literally gave Bush and Cheney exactly what they wanted. It didn't just give them what they wanted. They acted on it. A few weeks later, they declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization, and this is going to sound very familiar. Remember from Iraq, the prelude to Iraq? Proliferators of weapons of mass destruction. The way you put pressure on this administration is you stand up to them. You say no. A lot of us on this stage have learned our lessons the hard way, that you give this president an inch and he will take a mile. And this is about such an important issue. And we